now let's look at the while loops. The while and the for loops are both used for iterations or repetition of codes or repetition of statements, but they have some peculiarities or differences in terms of how they are being implemented. So in while loop, we have 4 key stages when we want to implement a loop using the while loop. We'll have what we call the initialization, condition, the body or execution, and finally update. So this is how it goes. First, I'm going to perform initialization. Let's say I want to generate numbers, let's say 1 to 5. I'll start by initialization. I can have something like count is equal to 1. So this count is known as the control variable. Now, I'm going to have a condition. First, I'll start with a while keyword and then a condition. This condition is an expression that evaluates to a Boolean value that is true or false. So I can have while count is less than or equal to 5. I end it with a colon. Now I'm going to provide the body of the loop. So I'm going to have print count. Then after this, I'm also going to provide what we call update. I need to update the control variable because if I don't do this, this is going to be an infinite loop. So I'm going to have count is equal to count plus 1. Now let's run the program. And as you can see, we have 1 to 5. So this is what happens when you implement a while loop. First, we have our control variable here, which we initialize to 1. So this is the initialization stage. So let's write it, initialization. Now here is where we have our condition. So what this means is that as long as this condition is true, the body keep on executing. It will keep on executing endlessly as long as this condition is true. And because we don't want our loops to execute endlessly, that is why we need to update our variables, which is what we did here. So this is where we update our variables. In for loops, we don't have to be worried about how the variables are updated because it is handled automatically by the for loop. But in while loop, you have to do it manually. Now let's look at what happens when this program runs. First, count is equal to 1. And if you look at this condition, the condition says count less than or equal to 5, which means that this expression is true. And because the expression is true, we're going to print count. And currently our count is equal to 1. And this is how it came about with the value here, 1. Now we're going to update or increment our control variable, which is count equal to count plus 1. So we'll have our variable count, and we're assigning it to the current value of the variable, which is 1. And so we have 1 plus 1, making count to be equal to 2. Now we're going to test this condition again. Currently, count is equal to 2, so we have 2 less than or equal to 5. And this is going to evaluate to true, and as such, we're going to print our count, which is currently 2. Now we'll increment it by 1, making count equal to 3. Now we'll retest again 3 less than or equal to 5, which is true, and so we print count, which is currently we have count at 3. We increment the count, now count becomes 4. We'll test this condition again, which is also true. Now we'll print count, which is currently at 4, then increment it by 1, making count equal to 5. Now we'll test it again. 5 less than or equal to 5 is also true. Now we're going to print 5, which is this 5. Then increment count by 1, making count equal to 6. Now we'll test this condition again. Now the condition evaluates to false, and because of this, the loop terminates. So this loop continues to execute as long as this condition is true. Now, if you look at this statement, we have count is equal to count plus 1. This is a way of us updating the variable or incrementing the variable by 1. We can as well use the shortcut, which is count plus equal to 1. So can remove this, run the program, we'll still get the same outcome. So this is basically how we implement the while loop in Python. Now let's say we want to start from 2 or from 3. What we need to do is to initialize count to, let's say, 3, and we'll run the program. As you can see, the number started from 3 to 5. And maybe we want to start from 3 and end at 10. So we can change this to 10. And this will give us 3 to 10. Now let me start from 0. I'm going to put 0 here. This will give us 0 to 10. If we want to start from 1, we'll have 1 like this. And this is going to give us 1 to 10. Now, apart from incrementing by 1, we can as well increment by 2 or by 3 or by 4. So let's say we want to increment by 2. I'll simply change this to 2. And now we have 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Now let me change it back to 1. As usual, we have 1 to 10. So one thing you have to keep in mind when you are using the while loop is that you need to provide a way of updating the variables. If not, you may end up having an infinite loop, which means that the loop continues going on and on and on without stopping, which is not the outcome we intended to have. So always make sure you provide a way of updating the variables, just like we have here. Here is updating control variable. If you don't have this, or if you don't implement this properly, you may end up having an infinite loop. And another thing you have to keep in mind is, assuming I have count is equal to 11, this loop will not execute in the first place. And the reason is because 11 less than or equal to 10 is false, and as such, the loop will not start in the first place. Now, apart from generating numbers in ascending order, that is from 1 to 10, we can as well generate numbers in a descending order. So let's say we want to generate 10 to 1. We can have something like count is equal to 10. So this is our initialization. Now we're going to have while count is greater than 0. Here we have our print count. Then we're going to update our variable. So we can have count is equal to count minus 1. Or better still, we can use the shortcut, which is count minus equal to 1. So let me remove this other one and also comment out this other one. So this time around, if I run the program, we'll have 10 to 1. So this is basically how we implement the while loop in Python.